Hi, this is Todd with ESOTERIC Car Care. Today we're taking a look at the decontamination process on our Ferrari 488. Okay, so you've been following along in the series, and the last one that we were talking about is going over the process that we had coming up with film removal, getting the car ready for polishing. So that's what we've done. We've just removed all of the paint protection film on this car. Now we can go in, do some further inspection underneath the film that was there that we couldn't see before, and start to get it ready for the polish section of it. When we go into polishing, we want to make sure that that surface is clean and stripped of everything as we possibly can, because it makes the polishing more efficient. So now that this is the paint protection film has been removed from it, we're going to go in and look for a couple of things. One, if you've watched the earlier episodes of this, we talked about there being wax caked in all the edges of the paint protection film. Now that that's gone, you can go around the car and you can follow those little white lines everywhere where there was an edge. So all that wax has to be stripped off of there. And during the removal process of the film, even though we're very careful in how it gets removed, there's still going to be a little bit of adhesive here and there, particularly on the edges where it was tucked under. And if you don't get all that removed, you'll be able to see it once new paint protection is put over top. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to go through and carefully make sure that all of that adhesive is removed from all of the surfaces where there was paint protection film and where there's new film that's going to be going down. Also, earlier we talked about there being, big pieces of tar all over the car, particularly in the back. So we have to go in with a combination of something like Geon tar that breaks down those deposits on the surface, and we're going to remove that. And then one of the other videos that we've done that you might want to take a look at, I'll go into more detail in there, is about the decontamination process. Chemical versus mechanical decontamination. And just how it sounds, one of them we're going to apply a chemical to the painted surface, and that's going to help draw out any kind of iron deposits that may get into the paint. Then we're going to go in and we're going to do mechanical decontamination. And that's going to be with either traditional detailing clay or a clay pad. And that just, what that does is anything that may be left on the surface, if you run your hand across the surface, particularly when it's wet, if you feel any grittiness whatsoever, that mechanical decontamination process gets rid of that. We want all of that completely off of the surface before we get into polishing. And another thing, we were talking about using Geon tar. That actually works fantastic for getting rid of wax buildup. We're able to go in there with tar, just a little bit. It restores it back to black. So if you're looking for an easy way to do that, Geon tar is fantastic for that. So we'll go in, we'll make sure everything is completely stripped. We want to get rid of all that stuff before we go in to the polishing process, because we don't want to have to worry about it afterwards. So even after doing our paint protection removal, you see that we've got a lot of work that we have to do before we can even start polishing on this. And we go to polish out this paint. On the front end, we remove the film. We found it's got all the factory defects as we were expecting. We talked about in one of the early episodes about how the plastic areas in particular will have bad holograms from the factory and sanding marks. It's exactly what we found underneath the paint protection film here. So then when we get into polishing, we're probably going to have 20 plus hours wrapped up in that before then we can even get into doing more paint protection film, more coatings and other fine details. So you can see that with a process of this magnitude, there is a lot of labor, a lot of time. This is not something you just knock out in a couple of days. We'll have this car here probably for a couple of week process to go through all this to make it look the way the owner is wanting to look. So now that we've talked about all of that, throughout this process, you've been seeing some B-roll video of some of these close-ups, some of these things that we're talking about, so you get a better idea of what it takes, what we're looking at, and what it takes to remove it. So from here, we will move on to the polishing video. So if you haven't got caught up so far, make sure you go up to the very first part of this series, watch up to this level, and then we'll get going with polishing. That's about all for today for our 488 Ferrari. For ESOTERIC Car Care, I'm Todd Cooprider. Thanks. We'll see you again next time.